Hi, and welcome back in our lecture on ventilation. And in this video, we're going to focus on the different types of ventilation equipment that could be used for a kitchen. And we categorize them into the direction of flow. So canopy or updraft ventilation equipment will draw the air upwards and then out of the house. And then proximity or downdraft equipment is going to draw the air downwards and also then out of the house. Let's start with those updraft hoods. The most common type, the type you're going to see in many homes, is a canopy hood. It could be wall mounted, and we've got an example over here of one that is in the construction process. So this piece is the hood, and then the ductwork is running through the box back here, up and out of the house. Right? You can see that it's next to a wall. Or it can be freestanding. Right? So here we have one that's freestanding in the middle of the room. It kind of drops down on its own. Those canopy hoods can have an integral or a remote blower. That means the fan unit itself, the motor of the fan. It could be right here. In fact, it typically is located right here in the hood, but it could also be remote and be placed somewhere up in the attic along that duct run. Another really similar style is called a mantle or a chimney hood. And they look almost the same. It's a little bit hard to tell the difference just looking at a photo. But what we've got with this type is a custom enclosure and then a separate unit placed inside that does all the work. All right. So in this picture, we've got an example of a custom copper mantle, right? And then inside, we can't see it, but it'd be placed right in here, up a little bit so that it's hidden. Inside, you're going to have a separate ventilation equipment. Continuing to talk about updraft hoods, you can have a combo microwave/hood. You saw this in an earlier video when we were talking about microwaves. It is common, it's inexpensive. The NKBA recommendations are moving away from this type of microwave and this type of hood. It's not ideal for cooking because it's out of the major reach range of your user. And it's not ideal for ventilation either. Because of the size of the hood, it's not wide enough for good capture area. Some people still do very much like this though, all right? So you and your user can make that determination. Also, we have a recessed or flush mount hood. This is your newest option, and it is pretty popular because it kind of recedes from view. It doesn't protrude into the space. So in the example here, we see, here's our ceiling of the room, and here is that flush mount hood vent. It doesn't drop down like the this freestanding that we saw, right? It is flush in the ceiling. The problem with this one is it really only works with lower ceilings, and as soon as your ceiling gets above about 9 feet, it's not going to be efficient because there's too much room for the gases and heat to expand and not be captured by that recessed or flush mount hood. Okay, so everything we've talked about was an updraft hood. Now let's talk about the downdraft hoods. The standard downdraft hood is non-retractable. It's integral to the cooktop. And this is kind of the older style. You'll sometimes still see these, but they are less popular. Right? What is more popular is a telescoping or pop-up downdraft hood. And that's what we see in this picture right here. So this whole piece is going to raise or lower as needed. So if nobody is cooking right at the moment, it will lower down and won't be in the way. Right. But there is an additional version. This is kind of the newest variation. It is very popular. It's called a parametric downdraft ventilation. And it looks just like this, right? There's nothing that pops up. Instead, there are narrow slots and a shaped flow of air will flow through those slots. Here's another example of it here. You can't see the vent in this case because it's below the grills, but you can see that the that vent is pulling the steam down and exhausting it. Right. All of these downdraft hoods are less efficient than the updraft hoods, right? Because there is a natural tendency for gases and odors and heat to rise and expand. So the downdraft hoods are fighting against that. They're less effective, but you definitely will have clients that want, like this because they are unobtrusive. Here are some general considerations when choosing your hood. The first is system power. We covered that in the last video, looking at the calculations for sizing that ventilation equipment. Right. We also, in that video, saw what influence the ductwork and the duct path had on your hood design. So shorter duct runs and more direct with less turns are more efficient. The physical hood size, all right, its capture ability is based on how wide the area of the hood is. And NKBA recommends at least 3 inches, 3 to 6 inches wider than the cooking appliance on each side. Finally, you also want to take into account the noise level of your ventilation equipment. It's measured in zones, and in general, the smaller the zone number, the quieter. All right, so pick low. Let's look at some standard sizes and mounting heights. We just saw that NKBA recommends that your hood be wider than the cooking appliance. So if you add 3 inches on each side, you'll get a total of 6 inches wider. For example, if you've got a standard 30-inch stove, you would pick a 36-inch wide hood. So they do come in widths of somewhere between 24 and 54 inches in 6-inch increments. Okay. They also come in a standard depth. They're roughly 17 to 21 inches. They're rarely deeper than that. Right? So we see that in this diagram here, the depth. Okay, and here was the width too. Also, we want to take into account the mounting height, and that is the distance between our cooking surface and the bottom of the hood. Right? It's recommended it be between somewhere 24 to 36 inches above your cooking surface. If you want a higher mounting height, perhaps you have a taller user, you want a higher mounting height, you might size up and choose a larger hood, right, for comparable efficiency. Our last hood design consideration here is, where does the exhaust go? After you're pulling the air out of this room, where does it go? There's 2 different ways. First of all, you could have a recirculating or ductless system. This basically pulls the air out and blows it right back into the room. It does filter the air, right, through the air, but it doesn't ventilate it, and this is not recommended, right? It is recommended that you exhaust to the outside, and that could happen a bunch of different ways, right? Here is one where the ventilation happens through a wall, so horizontal, straight out. Here's one where you ventilate up and go up through the roof, right? There's also, not shown here, but you could go up through the ceiling and then out and then down through the soffits here, right? If you could not have that roof penetration. Here is an example of an island, so you wouldn't have the wall option, so you would definitely need to go up. Okay. And just as a reminder, that does have to go all the way outside of the house, so don't terminate that vent system in your attic or in any other area. Don't blow that dirty air anywhere in the house. It has to go all the way out. Okay. I also want to revisit this idea of a remote fan. So most of your equipment is going to have the fan unit right here, right as close as you can get to the filter for ease, and all of that equipment is integral, right? But some of them have a remote, or they call it inline fan. The benefit of this is that the noise of the fan is outside of your living space. Right. And so what that would look like is, for example, in this picture here, instead of having the integral fan down here in your living space, you would place it up in here, right, in the attic, or sometimes even on the roof, and therefore all of that noise is outside of your living space. All right, my friends, in this video, we talked about all the different types of kitchen ventilation equipment and the different design considerations you need to look at when selecting it. Thank you.